There was a time in Afghanistan for many years where it was believed that purchasing opium was cheaper than a loaf of bread. Opium production and cultivation was at an all-time high during the US-led NATO occupation of Afghanistan from 2001 to 2021. The Western media and the mainstream corporate media told the world that in fact, opium cultivation and trade was a key revenue earner for the Taliban to fund their activities domestically. However, during my recent visit to the Islamic Emirate of Afghanistan, I wanted to inquire more as to how much of an issue has this drug addiction endemic been since the Taliban came to power in 2021, and what they are doing to help overcome those that are addicted to the drug, as well as those who have been cultivating the drug for many years. Afghanistan is a population of 40 million. During the occupation, it was believed that nearly 10% of Afghans, old and young, men and women, were addicted to opium and more recently methamphetamine. There have been dozens of new drug rehabilitation centers that have been created by the Taliban administration in Afghanistan, and I was able to visit the largest one in the country in Kabul, which beds 5,000 patients. So I got to see exactly how they are helping people overcome their drug addiction.
I'm at the largest drug rehabilitation center in Afghanistan, which hosts 5,000 beds. Now, as we speak today, there is an anti-narcotics delegation from Iran that is visiting Kabul to discuss how successful this methodology and strategy has been. It is estimated that in a population of 40 million people, there are around 3 to 3.5 million people that are addicted to either opium or methamphetamine. I am here right now to speak to the manager of this rehabilitation center to understand exactly what they do with drug addicts and how they help people overcome addiction. Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam.
Do you believe the current strategy by the Islamic Emirate to address drug addiction is a good strategy?
نو نظر د موږ د معلوماتو د تجربې په خاطر په د نگانه ان شاء الله په دغه رقم چې موږ روانه کړی هغه ښه طریقه ورته کتلې ده بیا به طرز العمل باندې موږ حرکت کوو.
Some critics say that this strategy is very harsh. It's actually very rough. It actually, in terms of how the inmates are brought here, they are treated in very harsh conditions. What's your response to this?
نو کله چې دا خلک موږ راوړو دغه کمپوټ او د بازارونو راټولو د دې لپاره په دې معنا باندې چې د یو مسلمان بچی ده او په اسلامي جامعه کې ژوند کوي نو دا داسې باید برابر شي لکه عام خلک چې د خپل ژوند نه په ښه استفاده د ژوند پاس کوي دې په خاطر یې راوړو نو کله چې په دې بنا راوړو بیا دلته نو موږ باید همغه سلوک ورسره وکړو لکه څنګه چې معاشره غواړي. کله وخت چې یو څوک یو وخت یو مریض ډیر مجرم وي بیا د یو کارمند د خوا ویل خو نشته یا تهدید لساني تهدید ورته ورسیږي هغه کارمند بیا موږ مجازات کوو. دومره اجازه نه لري چې په خپل سر څوک مریض ته یوه خشکه خبره وکړي.
What I witnessed when I was at the drug rehabilitation center in Kabul were hundreds of men, old and young, each with their unique story as to why they fell into addiction with opium or methamphetamine. The vast majority of them understood that what they were doing was haram and sinful. Many of them had their reasons and excuses as to why they turned to this drug. There is no doubt that hunger, poverty had led to many turning to opium addiction.
So here we have people who are addicted to opium. Some of them have been here for couple of days. The duration that they were told to stay here is 45 days. Now, I'm not sure as to why 45 days is the specified period, but I have a feeling it has something to do with the fact that in some Islamic schools of jurisprudence, someone who takes drugs or alcohol, their body is not pure for 40 days. Perhaps, don't know this for sure, but this is just a hunch that I have. And the Islamic Emirate have decided that a radical approach to drug addiction is one that would deliver more results. A country that's been ravaged with 40 years of war, in 3 years, opium cultivation has reduced by 80%. A nation of 40 million where 3.5 million people were addicted to either opium or methamphetamine is truly an endemic problem. So a radical strategy was required, but let's understand how successful it's been. Is the 45-day detention or rehabilitation, is it successful? Is it working?
What was fascinating was that in these drug rehabilitation centre, especially the one that I visited, there were a constant reminder to pray. Salat al-Jama'ah was something that was normal. Everyone would be praying. There would be Quran classes, Tajweed classes, basic Arabic classes, as well as Islamic education and a deterrent system that was centered around Islam and reconnecting with your faith and understanding your faith and understanding that there is a better life and a greater reward and honor in not being reliant on drugs and vice and intoxicants, and ensuring that salah and reading the Quran and these things were quite central to the spiritual rehabilitation, as well as the accountability that they would have in ever wanting to relapse or go back to or being tempted back to their addictions and these vices.
So here is an example of where many of the addicts are. There are certain phases to how the rehabilitation works here for the duration of 45 days. There's the initial period of cold turkey, whereby the addict struggles the most physically with regards to withdrawal symptoms. Then after around 10 to 14 days, they're then introduced and integrated to the wider population of the rehabilitation center, whereby they are taught Islam. There's a madrasa here, there's a skill center here, and they're actually told and encouraged to learn and re-contribute back into society. You can see many of the brothers here, young and old, men with beards. You know, when I say that the issue of opium addiction was truly an endemic, it affected the rich and poor, the young and old, right? And one of the reasons is poverty. When you're hungry and you can't eat, opium and drugs generally, it takes away your hunger. But it's so bad in the case of women, and we have no women addicts here, that your babies will be born addicts, right? Now, many will be watching this thinking this is too harsh. This is way too extreme. But let me posit this question to you, especially those of us from the US or from the West. How many reoffenders do you know? How many drug addicts go back to prison and actually score drugs within the prison? How high is the reoffending percentages in the UK alone, right? Is our prison system really rehabilitative? Does it actually change people at the core? Well, that's open to debate. I'm here to discuss and find out how successful this strategy has been from an individual level by finding out a bit about their stories.
بزرگترین مصدر پوچ در نظر دین اسلام است که فامیلی همه به گدایی رو خورده بودن، جواناش، پسرایشان، دخترایشان، اولادایشان، به خاطر که مردش مواد مخدر مصرف میکرد، طفلش مجبور بود بره از صف نانوایی نان گدایی بکنه. حالا فامیل خانواده‌شان است که دیگری برآمد، از فحشا و پوچگری برآمد، از دزدی، جرایم جنایی، فامیل امنیت شهر، خیلی اثرات مثبت زیبا و فراوان داره فامیل اقدام امارت اسلامی. هم خدا خوشحال میشه، هم رسولش خوشحال میشه، هم جامعه خوشحال میشه، امنیت ایجاد میشه. 99% 100% تغییرات آمده. عقل سلیم در بدن سالم، بدن که سالم بود عقل هم سالم است. و عقل ناقص بود که فهمیدید، جسم ناقص بود عقل هم ناقص بود. جسم وقتی آلوده مواد مخدر باشه خب عقل هم ناقص میباشه.
But besides the kind of spiritual guidance and the religious teaching, there was also a real life vocational aspect to these drug rehabilitation centers. And what I witnessed there, that there was classes for those who wanted to qualify as electricians, in plumbing, in DIY home repairs, shoe repairs, and creating and making bags and sacks. So these were real life skills that was actually helping hundreds, if not thousands, of opium and methamphetamine addicts to actually go back to society and offer and contribute back to society, whilst hopefully learning a new skill and making an earner. Many have gone back to work. Many have gone to work for the first time as a result of learning the skills that they had in the drug rehabilitation center. There were even English classes that I saw, and we got to speak to some of the students and teachers in these various courses.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim, by the name of Allah. My name is Wahidullah Malakhil and I've been here for the last 7 months. I'm ready anytime to go out, but we have to go by the procedure established by the counter-narcotics department, waiting for the relatives to appear and guarantee us and go out. Since I was severely sick outside and was unable to make a decisive decision whether to do what, and my family reported to the police department. They arrested me, brought me to the Phoenix, spent 3 months in there, then we shipped to here. And I've been spending the last 5 months in here, learning the profession skills.
So as I've mentioned a number of times during this short film, one of the key ways in which the Islamic Emirate seeks to reconnect drug addicts to Islam is once they are put into these rehabilitation centers, they are taught Quran, they're taught jurisprudence, they're taught the fara'id of the religion. Some of them leave here as Quran, hifz of Quran, hafiz of Quran. Some of them are imams. These are people who actually have more Islamic knowledge than your average layman, right? And why is that? So it instills taqwa. It instills taqwa amongst some of the addicts that if they were to re-offend or to have a relapse, that there will be a fear in them now that they have the knowledge of the religion. It acts as a preventative measure from the point of self-hisba, self-accountability, that you came into a rehabilitation center for X period of time, you learnt the religion of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, you learnt the Quran, you learnt all these things. So next time, if you were to have a relapse, that's always at the back of your head.
I was really taken back with the stories that I heard from the patients, as well as some of the truly inspirational and transformative stories of those who were former addicts but became imams, became huffaz of Quran, decided to stay on as teachers and volunteers. What was very different and reassuring to see is how central reconnecting with Islam was in these drug rehabilitation centers. For sure, there is no denying that the aesthetics and the feel of these rehabilitation centers were more like prisons and not your comfortable Western first world prisons. These places were clearly not meant to be places of joy and comfort for you to overcome a certain period to then come back again months down the line. So it was very reassuring and heartwarming to see a different approach to hard drug addiction and overcoming those addictions, and what steps were being taken by the Islamic Emirate of Afghanistan to help overcome a country which had an endemic of opium addiction, that now there has been a drastic reduction in both opium cultivation as well as opium addiction. And it is promising that such a societal problem, which affects many developed first world countries including the UK, that in the space of 3 years the Islamic Emirate of Afghanistan had taken such steps from the standpoint of their faith to ensure that opium cultivation and addiction was radically reduced around the country.